crew bar was an interesting place to be. You always had different groups of people that were fixed within their groups. The shoppies were always within their own group, as were the musicians, as were the youthies, as were housekeeping. Then you had the interlopers such as the togs, the bar staff and the production team. It was rare to get the showcasters or the entertainment officers into the crew bar, as they usually hung around in the wardroom with the stripes. Each group in the crew bar would have their own take on its games or interactions. The shoppies would usually bitch about how long they were paid, mixed in with the odd drinking game. Youthies would bitch about not being allowed on deck without permission and not being allowed into the buffet with drinking games and even drinking versions of kids' games added into the mix. Housekeeping would have their odd beer and pull out the karaoke machine at every available opportunity and bitch about the passengers in either Indian or Filipino, depending on which group were present. The musicians would normally talk about which instruments they dreamed of getting, along with bitching about not playing the music they loved, along with drinking games. The musicians had subgroups, as they usually hung around with their respective bands, that it did interlope between each respective band. The four-piece rock band had a unique progressive game. It was called the Game of Power, which always started with the first day of their contract and finished when the last band member walked off the gangway at the end of the contract. The game was essentially, if someone shouted power, then they would have to down the drink that they had in their hand. You could call an individual power if you said the band member's name before saying power. The game even involved not saying power, but showing one of the group or even the whole group the power button, which was typically a turned over ashtray or a crushed tin of beer, then pressing the power button. One particular night I was in the smoking room and the bar was quite dead. There weren't any of the production boys around, as they pretty much flaked out. There was a couple of youthies and shoppies scattered around the smoking room. I was sat with the pianist having a good old bullshit session when a four-piece practically fell through the smoking room's door. The four-piece came in and joined the pianist and I, where we were getting filled in about the night's events from the aft lounge. The band's keyboard player announced that he was going to the bar before it closed and asked if anyone wanted a drink. The guitar player, who was the band leader, ordered a double gin and tonic. The bass player ordered a double vodka and lemonade. The drummer ordered a double vodka and coke. Then H, the keyboardist, offered the pianist and I looked into my rucksack and I still had a litre and a half of vodka on me, so I knew that if I took a drink I would repay it once the bar was closed. So I ordered a double vodka and Red Bull, and so did the pianist. The band leader K came close to both the pianist and I and said, "Don't get too attached to your drinks. We're breaking our new keys player." I burst out laughing as I knew what was going to happen. I lit a cigarette and waited for it. A few moments later passed, then the door of the smoking room flung open. It was H, and he had in his possession everyone's drinks and the bottle of red wine sticking out of his trousers pocket. Before H had any chance to cross the room and put the drinks down, "Power!" the rest of the band shouted. H looked at everyone and we all looked back at him. "You know the rules," said K. "Power it." H put all the drinks down on the nearest table, followed by the bottle of wine. "You're all cunts," said H as he picked up one of the vodka Red Bulls. H shoved his hand into the drink and pulled out the ice, then threw all the ice at the hysterical band leader K, who continued to laugh with a face full of ice. H took down the double vodka and red, and he grabbed the double gin and tonic. Once again, putting his hand into a glass, pulling out the ice and throwing it at the bass player J. H necked the drink and his body juddered with the overpowering taste of the nearly half a pint of gin. H began to gag hard and I thought that the poor bastard was now on the ropes. I stood up and walked over towards the door of the smoking room and left. Though this wasn't a departure of disgust, I returned a few seconds later with a bin and placed it next to H. "If you're gonna spew into this," I said with a pathetic American accent, trying to emulate the character Garth from the movie Wayne's World. Once again, H picked up another drink, and this time it was the double vodka and lemonade. He scooped the ice out and flung it across the room, peppering everyone that was in its path with ice. Without hesitation, he powered down the crisp, lemony drink, followed by an almighty belch. I could smell his putrid belch from the other side of the room. H began to wobble on his feet, and it looked like he was close to either passing out or throwing up, perhaps both at the same time. There was one double vodka Red Bull left and a bottle of red wine. I did not see this ending well at all. but I have to give H credit where credit is due, as he managed to chew down the double vodka Red Bull along with the ice. H was now no longer able to keep still. He was wobbling all over the gaff. Every time the ship hit a wave, no matter how big or small the wave, H just lunged into that direction. He lit a cigarette, and with his entire face contorted, he was able to force out the word "fucking cunt." H then began to talk in tongues. No one could understand a word of what he was saying, with the exception of the odd fuck and cunt. H fumbled around the table and eventually managed to pick up the bottle of wine. He unscrewed the lid and then put the bottle to his lips. H paused and looked around. No one knew what he was looking for, especially as no one could understand the soppy cunt. H placed the opened bottle of wine back onto the table and then stuck his head into the bin. At this point, I thought it was game over, but it wasn't. H found what he was looking for, a plastic straw. H plunged the straw into the neck of the bottle, then bent the bendy section down towards so it was parallel with the neck of the bottle. This is an old trick called the bottle bong, where the air pressure going through the straw will send the liquid out of the bottle and forcing it down your throat in next to no time. All you needed was the open palate ability, and you were either born with the open palate or not. This is how people can sink drinks in a couple of seconds, as this open palate just allows you to tip as much fluids down your neck without having to take massive gulps. H once again put the bottle to his lips, but hesitated once more. This time he pulled the bottle away and began to clap his other hand to the bottle. Is this cunt for real? I thought to myself. The fucker wanted a round of applause as he was about to down his final drink. The whole smoking room began to clap encouragement for H. As the room became loud with clapping, H announced he was ready by waving his arms across his chest. We all fell silent. H put the bottle of wine up to his lips and began to chug the bottle down. The smoking room became loud with chants of "Power! Power! Power!" as H was chugging back the bottle of wine. In roughly 10 seconds the bottle was devoured, and H raised the bottle as a salute, then held it into the bin. There were cheers from all over the room. Then it happened. H fell back and landed like a sack of shit, with the deck going bang on the impact of H's unconscious body. H was out for the count, looked as white as a sheet of paper. No one rushed to the aid of H, as we knew that he would be fine. The poor cunt just needed to sleep it off. H lay motionless for about a minute. Then out of nowhere, H came back to life. His body looked possessed, as though it was a scene from The Exorcist. His possessed body lurched upward and neck cocked and his head tilted to one side. H's body looked gangly and devoid of life. Then it happened. A purple-red gusher of vomit sprayed out of his mouth as though it was a burst water main. The strange coloured chunder sprayed everywhere, covering the floor, hitting the window, bouncing off the walls of the ceiling. H's full attire was now dripping with the rank juice. Once the jets of chunder had finished, H collapsed once more and landed directly into the middle of this foulness, face first. It was lucky that I was sat at the back of the room with some of the four-piece band managed to get sprayed with H's wretch. Both the pianist and I were laughing our heads off as this became the highlight of the cruise. Neither of us had seen anything this funny in ages, but the best bit was still to come, and that was observing the Power Rangers trying to pick up H and drag him out of the crew bar and up to his cabin without anyone being caught by security. At first, the drummer S went over to pick up H, and this was an instant failure as S tried to tiptoe towards H as he was trying not to get chunder all over his shoes. As soon as S picked up H became a dead weight and landed back on the floor, bringing S down on top of him. I began to laugh once more and nearly choked on my cigarette as I was laughing so hard. Both Kate and Jay walked over whilst laughing and attempted to help the stacked musicians. Getting S up was the easy bit, as it was like trying to pick up a ton of bricks trying to pick up H. Eventually Kate and S grabbed H by the arms and started to drag H along the floor. S was on door duty. The remaining Power Rangers dragged H along the floor, leaving the massive streak of vomit along the floor. They dragged H along the floor of the main area, once again leaving a streak of vomit along the floor. It also became apparent that there was also vomit-shaped footprints along the floor. This was going to get tricky, as now they would evidently get caught, as the trailer chunder would lead directly to H and J's cabin. Both the pianist and I decided to follow, perhaps to help out, but mainly to laugh ourselves stupid. We came to the stairwell and Kay pressed the lift call button. They dropped the unconscious H on the floor and gave themselves a bit of a break whilst they waited for the lift. The ship hit a big wave and the front of the ship had a massive bounce. This meant a bit of trouble for everyone as we struggled to stay on our feet. Then we all heard a mass banging and then one giant thud. H had taken the expressway down to deck 7. The poor bastard had taken a tumble down an entire flight of stairs. We all looked at each other and then darted down the flight of stairs to deck 7. I felt that would be for the best, as he probably would have really hurt himself if he was sober. We gave him a quick once over to check if anything was broken and if he was bleeding. Unfortunately, he appeared fine, minus being covered in vomit. S pressed the call button for the lift and it arrived shortly. We all dragged H into the lift and I pressed the deck 11 as the doors opened. I ran out and ran ahead port side to keep lookout. The pianist did the same on the starboard side. S was still on the door opening duty whilst K and J resumed dragging H to the cabin. Finally, H was safely inside his cabin, as were we all. H was tucked away safely in the bathroom and laid down in the shower. We covered him in towels to keep him warm, as we really didn't want to cover his bed in chunder. The crew bar was now off limits as it was full of chunder. Jay had to stay in his cabin to make sure that H didn't do something stupid, like getting the munchies and going up to the buffet covered in vomit. S decided to go back to his cabin and take a shower, as did K, so both the pianist and I went back to my cabin for a few more drinks. The next day I called up H and J's cabin to find out how H was. Jay picked up the phone and told me that H has no memory after powering down the double gin and tonic, and that he had some dirty bruising all around his ribs, but he was fine. H went down to the medical centre once he had sobered up and told a complete lie that he fell out of the top bunk and onto his cabin mate's bass amp when the ship hit that big wave last night. I doubt they believed him, but after having my own drunken accidents and lying about them, I'm sure he did get away with it, though he kept a low profile and was hardly seen outside of work until his bruising had gone away.